Have you ever been so sure you were completely alone, only to realize someone or something was there with you the whole time? A friend of mine once told me a story I'll never forget, and to this day, it keeps me up at night. It was a cold, quiet night, the kind where even the smallest sound echoes like a scream. He was home alone for the weekend, watching TV and mindlessly scrolling through his phone, enjoying the rare peace and quiet. But then things started to feel off. At first it was subtle, barely noticeable. The feeling that someone was watching him, the prickling sensation on the back of his neck. He chalked it up to his imagination. But then he heard it, a soft creak, like a footstep, coming from the hallway. He froze, his eyes fixed on the doorway, waiting for the sound to come again. It didn't. He told himself it was probably just the house settling and tried to laugh it off. But then his phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. It read, "Why aren't you answering the door?" Confused, he glanced at the front door through the peephole. No one was there. His heartbeat quickened as he double-checked the locks. Every muscle in his body tensed. Moments later, he heard a faint knock, barely a tap, on the glass patio door at the back of the house. His stomach dropped. No one should have been back there. Slowly, he crept toward the patio, the silence of the house pressing down on him like a weight. As he reached the door, he could barely make out the faint outline of a shadow moving outside. Then came the worst part, the realization. Whoever or whatever was out there had already been inside. When it all started as a typical evening, nothing out of the ordinary. My friend had the whole house to himself for the weekend, which he usually loved. It was his chance to unwind without anyone bothering him. He ordered takeout, set up a movie on the TV in the living room, and settled in with a blanket. The house was quiet, almost too quiet, but he didn't think much of it at the time. He told me everything seemed normal at first. The soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the occasional distant bark of a dog outside. It was the kind of silence you grow used to. But as the hours went by, the quiet started to feel different. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, though he couldn't put his finger on what it was. It started with small things, like the flickering lamp in the corner of the room. He'd bought it secondhand, so he thought maybe the bulb was going out. Then he noticed the TV volume seemed lower than he remembered, even though he hadn't touched the remote. Strange, but not enough to make him worry. At least, not yet. The unease really started to creep in when he heard the first sound. A soft, almost imperceptible shuffle coming from the hallway. He paused the movie and listened, straining to hear nothing. He told himself it was just the wind, maybe the house settling, but the sound came again a few minutes later. This time a little louder, a little closer. And then there was that unmistakable feeling. You know the one. That prickling sensation at the back of your neck, like someone is standing just behind you watching. He glanced around the room, half expecting to see something or someone, but everything looked normal. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that the night was about to take a very dark turn. The moment everything shifted was sudden, sharp, and undeniable. My friend told me it started just as he was beginning to convince himself that nothing was wrong. He was scrolling through his phone, the movie playing in the background, when he heard it. A sharp, deliberate knock, not at the front door, not at the back door. It came from upstairs. He froze, the kind of frozen where your body feels paralyzed, your breath caught in your throat. There was no way anyone should have been up there. He lived alone, and every window and door had been locked. He sat there staring up at the darkened staircase, his mind racing to find a logical explanation. Maybe something had fallen. Maybe it was the house shifting again. He wanted to believe that, but then it happened again. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. The silence after each knock felt unbearable. His heart pounded in his chest as he stood up, his legs shaky beneath him. Against every instinct screaming at him to stay put, he moved toward the stairs, clutching his phone like it would somehow protect him. The second he reached the bottom step, the lights in the living room flickered. Not the casual dimming of a faulty bulb, but violent, rapid flashes, plunging the room into alternating darkness and light. His breath quickened as he turned back toward the living room, and that's when he saw it. A shadow. It darted across the wall near the kitchen, moving so quickly that he almost thought he imagined it, but he didn't. He swore to me that it was real. Tall, human-like, but not quite right. He called out, his voice trembling. "Hello?" No answer, just silence. And then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw it again, this time in the hallway leading to the patio. That was the moment he realized whatever was in the house wasn't trying to hide. It wanted him to know it was there. By the time my friend truly understood the danger he was in, it was too late. After seeing the shadow, his nerves were shot. He grabbed the closest thing he could find, a heavy candlestick from the mantel and started checking the house, his hands trembling so badly that the metal clanged against the walls as he moved. The living room lights flickered one last time before cutting out completely, plunging him into darkness. The only source of light was the faint glow of his phone, but when he tried to turn on the flashlight, the app wouldn't open. He swore to me it was as if something was deliberately messing with him. That's when the knocking started again, this time from multiple places at once. The sound echoed through the house, coming from the walls, the ceiling, even the windows. Panicked, he tried to open the front door, but it wouldn't budge. He pulled harder, twisting the lock frantically, but it was as if something on the other side was holding it shut. Then he heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps, heavy and deliberate, coming down the staircase. He turned to face the stairs, every muscle in his body frozen in place. At the top of the staircase stood a figure, barely illuminated by the dim light from his phone. It wasn't just a shadow this time. It was something solid, humanoid but distorted, like it didn't quite belong in this world. He didn't wait to see what it would do. He bolted toward the kitchen, aiming for the back patio door, but as he reached it, his heart sank. It was locked from the inside, and no matter how hard he pulled, it wouldn't open. He glanced over his shoulder and saw the figure descending the stairs, its movements slow and deliberate, as if it knew there was nowhere for him to go. Desperate, he grabbed a knife from the counter and shouted, "Who are you? What do you want?" The figure didn't respond. It just stopped at the foot of the stairs, tilting its head unnaturally, as if studying him. Then with a sound like a guttural growl, it started toward him. He swears he doesn't remember how he escaped, just flashes of running, fumbling with the door, and sprinting into the street barefoot. When he finally looked back, the house was dark and silent, the figure nowhere to be seen. But even now, he says he can still feel its presence, like it followed him that night and never left. After that night, my friend couldn't bear to stay in the house. Whatever he had experienced was more than just an intruder. It was something beyond comprehension, and the thought of returning made his skin crawl. He moved out within days, leaving most of his belongings behind, but the unease followed him, and questions about what really happened refused to fade. Weeks later, he reluctantly went back to collect the last of his things, his stomach in knots as he stepped into the empty house. It was eerily quiet, like the place had been holding its breath. While packing up a box in the living room, he accidentally knocked over a lamp. As he bent down to pick it up, he noticed a loose floorboard near the corner of the room. Curiosity got the better of him, and he pried it open. What he found inside stopped him cold. A small, weathered notebook, its pages yellowed with age. The writing inside was chaotic, scrawled in a shaky hand. It was filled with cryptic phrases like, "It feeds on fear, and it thrives in silence." There were dates written throughout, some going back nearly 50 years. Each date was followed by the same ominous phrase, "It returns." The realization hit him like a punch to the chest. Whatever was in that house had been there long before he arrived. It wasn't random, and it certainly wasn't over. He left the house that day and never went back, but even now he says he can't escape it. He dreams of the shadow waking in cold sweats, convinced it's standing at the foot of his bed. The scariest part? He swears the dates in the notebook didn't end. The next one is only days away.